이봐 살바 그러니 사마 다시들래 조개들래.
Good morning and hello everybody.
We'll begin with the opening prayers in the Yellow Prayer Book on page 1. All Mother sentient beings, limitless as space, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be free from suffering, and swiftly may they attain precious, unsurpassed, perfectly complete enlightenment. All Mother sentient beings, limitless as space, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness, be free from suffering, and swiftly may they attain precious, unsurpassed, perfectly complete enlightenment. For that purpose, until I attain Buddhahood, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. Until death, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. From today until this time tomorrow, I will apply my body, speech, and mind to virtue. Mandala offering on page 7.
Ram jam jam zo shen ben yor pi so ma le lo ye lang de ber la na ten nian zhou gong tu jie zong de se da le lang ju do ba jin qi dang Hong Kong Jin Jin Chai Yong De Ma Jin Da De Zong Wen Gu Bu Jie Se Gu Ber Jie Dong Zin Xie Wa Sin Ji Lu Me Dan Yu Men Ta Yong Ge Xin Yin Ga Ne Song Do Ta Jie Jie Men Jian Lan Den Ne Lo Men Zhan Zhou Per Ve San Jie To Ma Sin Jie Lu.
An infinite array of worlds, each with 4 continents and the wealth of infinite oceans of realms, if I bring them all to mind and offer them without exception, please hold with compassion all the beings they contain. My body, enjoyments, and whatever I own, my aggregates, elements, and sense sources, my aspirations now and in times to come, as well as everything I grasp as mine. By offering them all, may I be blessed with the end of self-grasping, completely liberated from the bounds of real and unreal, transcending the names and concepts of arising, cessation, and abiding, coming and going, affirmation and denial. The supreme mandala is the natural state. By offering it, may I be blessed to attain the state of Buddhahood.
Om Guru Deva Jai Kena Rena Mendra Pade Doso.
Page 10, requesting teachings.
Sem Jinam Jes lo ye se ra che da wa che chong tu mong te pa ye che jian ko lo gu du su.
Please turn the wheel of the Dharma of the greater and lesser vehicles and the teachings common to both according to the dispositions and mental capacities of sentient beings.
그런 로아tam지 로아를 족라 차소라 개어지대 삼대가 많이서 사삼을 개어야 되나 데이터 들고 좀 소울다 보면은 하래야 그것도 또 먹던 좋다는 데이터 삼대가랑지 삼대가 용띠 데이터 제가 펜바들이 용왕아지 되는 거다 데이터 이렇게 펜바다 데이터 옆에는 상나다나 들이 다낭장을 가는 데이터지는 들이 빼는 마 저거 보고 저를 다 보잖아 파라도 선마 족딱딱 창고 요래 그 relativi티 파라도 선바 족티 시합 창고 시합가리 시합 때 다른 줄 나가 버스 그게 나가 버스 차례에 이제 나서지 그래 보고 인터넷 속아자고 나가 버스 다 보자고 이 보고 삼태비와 그 좋은 줄도 그래 relativi티를 로알 줄 기아 됐다 요리스 요나 때 고속에 기아에 뭐 하고 요 말이야 pen poco chungchong pe shabang bol chera ti poco de kasan ba to jo le o ta ti da po ja ngu kang na chu lo chi te le da ho sam che yong ti de ha ko ne ti ti ji se yang gom cha ti te ta ta da rang ke mo ta ko ti ta ta de pe de mo so pa pa na mi se de sung yo le ger zo da ni lu ma ye se de ti sam cho ni che sa ba ger zo yang da che mo mo so 코시티 상속세고 찍었다고 연례들이 소소 쳤다고 자들이 먹을까면서 땅도와지 되는 그 상속 저저저저저래 이렇게 고소 가까리 마산 가까이 말에 책위제라니 다진이가 찍발이 유모모 남지 찍발이 상태가 남지 찍발이 찍절로 지는 데이터 생기게 동시에 말 로아를 들어오지 대줄 상태만 보여래 상태인지 그래서 비디 용띠 탑자도 못 주인 진리들이라는 게 지세형 너무 지세형 왜 지세형 찾을 때 별로 도비디 타고 지나 하 리아고 내는 잡아서 따도 되는데 doktorten sanchoksen joacho san seven mombatina 그 랑게 sanchoksen데 딱 주는데 근데 강의들이 사자서 보고 가면서 우리 동당대 발라요 좀 너무하게 근데 20m 중에는 전부 소야야 요 다다 삼지 차와든 삼지 양자양도 걸로 그 삼지의 용진시 뒤치에서 마지막에 끼치와는 공리 펼쳤고요. 삼지의 체체로 삼지의 용진 하고 그걸 대를 도와를 보고 진짜 이걸 뒤쓰는 좀 망보죠. 근데 쓰는 거 이제 뭐 하고 말에 배를 총과지가 총강쳐서 정되나 가지 표현에도 제 쌈먹이 얘기는 피발이 좋고요. 쌈들은 광교에 사서 결혼 좋고요. 마서 그때 코티 하고 오면은 거기다 다 주고 당가 총각이야 동고 쌈들은 그래서 소소 비용지 쌈거든. 그 콘데도 마음고 상속세고 뛰절은 네 총각이 고수는데 다를 때 쓰는 거 저런데 뜻다 쓰는 거 저런데 나다디 잡고 만나나 송거리 이제 이 감정이 로봇 탐지 차지를 파악하더니 잠보주고 모남디 이빙으로 리젝트하는 대파체반은 손은 답을 줘도 되죠. 송 사제성 돈은 인핑으로 해서 기세랑 고민을 나중에 탐지 다이 뒤에서도 사과상 다 보는 이제 저럴 상황도 자치고 락치고 가서 가리더니 손은 그저 하마가 다 하고 또 대사적 저 탐지상 저절절래 로마서도 너무 대소고요. 그때 뭐하지는 뜻인데 혼자라도 답을 배샤고 하면 계산을 봐. 그 소소라도 쓰는 게되게 그래서 사과들이 터졌고요. 그러니 돈이냐면 저거래. 이 더든 로기야만 되게 가이지 지세랑 뭐서 이 책이 양대 빌든 방고 저기서 이바랑 이바도 저기 이바도 드디어 못해서 pero socha chawa de 그래서 내가 저도 대야 못해서 선지로도 양대양대 그 사족선 소고래 대다들 조들 사족선 조 하정선이 자체주된 기술이라는 거래. 이 대라 빠져는 못 지겠어 뭐래. 빠져는 못 쳐. 냐니 기친긴도나 이해랑 나 광셔시. 다 주라가 가이트는 거니 죽어서 이거 냐르되니 다시 쓰는 토고 꾸시게 가서는 토고 다 서기 약원수 지는데 지세양 공동 근데 소남데 냥도 톱소 때도 놀로면만 벌써 오늘이 들이 이게 세방 세된 조방 세진바 대상세대 이거도 탐지를 주세요 거는 들때지 대성거를 대외들이 개치죠 수험체보다 야들이 되는 수험체보 타고 탁대가 지시랑 대기죠 뭐 로기랑 지시랑 어송 들이 대가 다다 지시랑 차도를 뭐 지시랑 차도 중체보다 세당당 마제당 노차다 노차르스니 차도 정을 때때리 세당 때때리 마자르 때때리 세당 진짜를 내몸 똑똑 싸웠지 또 차도를 차가 깨지 쳐고 그래 소 중체는 들고 남상들이 매상도 생기 도토고 대다로 좀 지시랑 송
So, Dharma friends, we continue the teachings from yesterday, the 7 branches, and so we next come to the branch of rejoicing, which is the antidote to jealousy. And so here we recognize the faults of jealousy, and so that is actually something that has to be something that has to become really clear in our mind. What's the quality of rejoicing? Because it is often a bit obscure. Because jealousy is a very subtle affliction. We can almost not notice that it's actually there, but it's there. And actually, it is a very powerful force that destroys our merit. For example, Sakya Pandita had said in the words of advice that someone who cultivates an evil intention, a negative thought, like competitive thoughts, that will destroy their merit. The merit becomes exhausted. And so ultimately this kind of competitive or ambitious mind ultimately leads to jealousy. And it always arises in our mind just naturally on an ongoing basis as we are unmindful. Jealousy, competitive mind always kind of lingers there in our mind. And it's related to many of the other afflictions too. So, for example, because of our desire or attachment that ends up in jealousy, kind of dissolves in jealousy. Or when we get angry of an aggression against something, that also ends up in jealousy. And also, in the end, it all comes down to ignorance. And ignorance is not knowing the fault of jealousy. So therefore, if you understand the quality of bodhicitta, you will understand the fault of jealousy. When you get jealous and you understand the quality of bodhicitta, you will recognize, now I am losing my bodhicitta. And so if you just think in this way, Dhamma friends, that will be excellent. For example, this is how it is also explained in the 37 Bodhisattva practices. And it always arises, especially when there's like a peer, someone of kind of similar or lower status than ourselves. If they're just a little bit lower, there's a slight difference in status. There's all kinds of circumstances that always instantly trigger our jealousy. And so, as it is said in the Samantabhadra prayer, in this way, the imprints grow stronger and thicker. So as we develop these small thoughts of jealousy, we place more and more imprints into the mind. And slowly these imprints then increase in the mind, and then it is always ready to arise. For example, when we just hear about like somebody else, we hear somebody say something, or when we say something about others, for example, we naturally go into this direction of kind of raising ourselves in a way, and then putting others down and harming others. So we speak motivated by jealousy. And then because of that, slowly we create a conflict between people. And that's also where the conflict between countries comes about. It comes really from jealousy. And then the ultimate fruition of jealousy is anger, hatred. And then what's the fault of anger. What does anger harm? It harms your love. It destroys your love. And love is your only cause of merit. So here in the text, then it says, so on page 11, it says, so I beseech you, protect us, and so on. And in the end, Rinpoche read, so please, what is it? Oh, sorry. Before that, no, sorry, next one. Was it? Yeah. Please ripen sentient beings without exception. So it's related to rejoicing, and so, for example, without exception, every single sentient being, for example, when you see a little tiny animal, they also actually, when you observe them, they possess love. For example, how they take care of their own offspring. And that's also their cause of merit. And that's because they all possess Buddha nature. Because of that, because they possess Buddha nature, just naturally they have a perception of mother and child, and the mother knows how to care for the child with great love. So even a little animal can feel love to some extent, and that's because they possess Buddha nature. And then this is what makes them increase their cause of merit. So the merit increases that in that way, and eventually when it fully matures, then they take again a birth in the higher realms, for example, as a human being that possesses the Dharma. And then gradually, step by step, they are brought to the state of enlightenment, or the path to enlightenment. So sentient beings are liberated gradually. There's this prayer where we say, may I liberate those not liberated. So that means you liberate those sentient beings living in the 3 lower realms into bringing them to the 3 higher realms. And then it says, may I release those not released. And then those who already are born in the higher realms, they're caused to cultivate renunciation. And then the 3rd line says, may I give breath to those without breath. And that means those who already have cultivated renunciation and entered the pratimoksha path, they are gradually established on the path of the bodhisattvas. And so in this way, slowly they increase their merit, and their Buddha nature never becomes spoiled. So gradually the merit, the love will grow stronger and stronger. Because Buddha nature is the wisdom, the intelligence that beings possess, and because that's their inherent nature, it will always cause the slightest love that is present to increase more and more. So because that is what we are, Buddha nature can never give us up, never forsake us. And that is why ultimately all sentient beings go naturally toward the state of enlightenment. That is their nature. And so in the 6 realms of samsara, even in a temporary sense, whatever they do with love, whatever they do with body, speech, and mind that comes from a mind of love is what we call virtuous. And we can see that in the animal realm, for example, how animals care for each other with great love. It's actually, when you look at it, it's quite incredible how a sentient being like an animal, actually, who is a being of great ignorance, still has an ability to care for the others and protect the lives of other animals, for example, with so much love. So it's quite amazing how animals really care for each other. And then everything else too. At the time when you train your mind in a pure view, then everything that is beneficial is really a great merit. So, for example, even the benefit that is caused by the 5 elements and so on. And so, for example, in the case of a mother caring for her child, in an ordinary samsaric sense, actually by caring for the child, the mother perfectly practices the 6 paramitas. So the 6 paramitas are complete within her caring for the child. But then the 6th paramita, the paramita of wisdom, what happens to that in an ordinary context? It becomes the self. So the mother thinks it's my child. And then she's attached to her child and naturally has an aversion against others. So for example, when her child fights with another child, then she will, of course, take the side of her child and protect her child and blame the other child. So this is how it is in samsara. And so also, because wisdom has become the self, the mother or ordinary beings don't recognize that they're actually practicing the paramitas. Actually, that is a great virtue, but they don't recognize it. And so that is just like, for example, if you give a lot of money to a little child, they will likely just waste that money. So therefore, it's better to put the money in the bank, and so you also draw an interest then from that. So you gradually increase your virtue. First, you have to understand the quality of love, and then understanding that, you rejoice. In the Vajrakilaya practice, in a dedication, it says that through transforming and completion or perfection, transforming and perfecting all the virtues accumulated by myself and all others, may the ultimate or the authentic, ultimate pure state be attained. So it speaks about transformation and perfection. So we take this virtue of bodhicitta that we have, and there's also another prayer where we say, may all of these virtues become the cause of bodhicitta. So we transform everything into becoming the cause of bodhicitta, which then ultimately becomes the cause of enlightenment. So think of it in this way. So you don't think that there's all these kind of separate virtues, but you bring them all to mind. We all have the same, all beings, of self and others. So our mind is the same, our afflictive emotions are one and the same, our love is one and the same. So recognize that. For example, the love between friends, or that a love that you have for an animal, for example. Remember just the quality of love, and when you know the quality of love, then you will rejoice. So for example, when you see there are two friends who are really harmonious, then if you rejoice, you would think that this is incredible, this is so good. And in the end, may this turn into the cause of enlightenment. May this become bodhicitta. May their love become bodhicitta. So think in this way and cultivate such an aspiration. And in this way, bodhicitta is always sustained. And also in the context of practicing Mahamudra, from the perspective of the ultimate truth, it is said, there is one quote by the Dakini Niguma, and she said that you must nurture the fire spark of awareness over and over again, so it grows into a greater fire. And so first you have a very small feeling of love, but then when you habituate to that over and over again, by understanding its qualities, it will increase. So in this way, you must know how to increase your love. And so you do that by observing beings, like, for example, animals, and so on, and rejoicing in any slight virtue that you observe. Because actually there is so much virtue, so much merit that is actually being created all the time. It's just that beings don't know that. For example, even animals create many causes of merit, but they don't recognize that as merit. For example, like a business person who owns a store, it depends on their motivation. They have a great opportunity to accumulate merit by doing their business if they think that whatever I do here may be of benefit to others. Then actually when they recognize that this is a way to accumulate merit, then this intention becomes bodhicitta. But then mostly people don't know that there is an opportunity for merit, and they just think about themselves, for example, thinking about improving their shop and so on. So this can also become a cause of merit if, for the future, if it is seen with the motivation of bodhicitta. For example, this is also said in the Prayer for Excellent Conduct. It says that it is a greater merit to join one's palms in faith and cultivate a an altruistic mind for just a single moment than it is to make offerings to all the Buddhas of jewels that fill up the entire universe. So it's a greater merit to cultivate an altruistic mind and faith just once. So when you rejoice with an altruistic mind, then the virtue of self and others after 3 times becomes extremely vast and powerful. And the root of that is to recognize that merit is all over the place. There's merit everywhere. It just needs to be recognized. And when you recognize it, it becomes the cause of turning into bodhicitta. Then your good intention becomes bodhicitta. So this is also how it is said in a different dedication prayer. Like may all the merit accumulated by self and others turn into the cause of enlightenment through bodhicitta. So this is similar to putting your money into a bank where you draw an interest. So it increases. In this way, your love increases. And the benefit is obtained by not just yourself, but both self and others. So think about these lines of rejoicing here again and again. So you rejoice in all the virtues of all beings. For example, when you give a little bit of somebody makes an offering to a beggar, for example, who is begging, and then you rejoice in that and think this is so good, it's so excellent. Or if you see an animal, how they care for each other, then you rejoice in that and think that now they have found some happiness, like for example they have found food and so on. So rejoice in this way over and over again whenever you see anything, and it really is all over the place. There's always a way to accumulate a merit by rejoicing. So actually, the most important friend or companion of bodhicitta is rejoicing. And then Patul Rinpoche had said, if you want to accumulate merit while sleeping or lying down, then you should rejoice in the merit of others. So if you feel that I just want to have a good time and lie around, but I actually still want to accumulate merit, how can I do that? Then in that case, you should rejoice in the merit of others. Because this is how you will naturally receive merit. You will receive the same merit than the other person that you're rejoicing in. So there's actually many instructions on that in the sutras, the scriptures, and so on. So when you rejoice, you bring to mind any virtue that has been created in the past, or even that will be created in the future, and that is being created right now. You bring it all to mind. And this is really a way to accumulate great merit, great virtue, even while lying down and doing nothing. So that's why rejoicing is extremely important. And so rejoicing is an antidote to jealousy. So remember the great fault of jealousy again and again. So from how jealousy develops is that there is attachment, and it develops into jealousy and pride, and then that turns into hatred or anger. So it's important to recognize jealousy when it starts to form, because it is a very subtle feeling, and the very subtle feeling needs to be recognized immediately. And this recognition is just like fire burning wood. This is how you need to liberate jealousy as it arises. So that's the main point on rejoicing.
Dubjira dugi jotu fuyore, korsemji tapsige, ter tamok la fuyore, tamok le, tamok dreva tere, devan dojang dungan le jok sebe, ter fuyore, tere jala bonga saru tere chuchu kolo, chuchi bate sede jol gore so, 샘들들은 사실 좀 뒤지가 까토만은 나도 샘들지 샘들고 늦게도 가려야 돼. 니지지 들고 또 나보는 니지게 되만 들이 따따따 또 저들이 저 다디들 진핑으로 다디들 들고 늦게 때리 늘 탑때 대만이 좀 그런데 사마당 이제 진핑으로 들고 또 남들 때리 니지 들고 그래 그 최종 콜로 대들이 뭐지 속균이 되어서 그리고서 다시 인터넷에 사진 샷자서 봐 팬네야 이거는 시작하면 돼 잡으리는 패거리에서 대로 말이 대로 이제 띄우는 또라 망보라 되지 사진 안쪽 대로 대치 걸로 거기 요래 배랑 팬네디 제인데 취직하고 네 다좀 보는 정말 벤더를 사절 라방 중이다 로선 남을 타고 나니 샤드 벤 베레 사절이니 하이원 보잡지 로나 그 라나 사들이 갈는 사라에 잡지 잡아보고 샤드에 베나 다다 치르고 매직 말 잡아보고 샤드 베디로 저 강에 셈이 이제 쭉바에 차례들이 시합 차들이 닝지 차들 시합 이제 시합을 차들이 샤고 때리 사지에서 또 좁은 거요래 그때다 속기지 되는데 소양이나 잡수다게 해서 그때 소양이나 잡도들이 좀 공부해서 사지에서 들이 용티 먹고서 거래 연들이 좀이 기록 올라오면서 좀만 봐서 그때 또막 탐치들 잡아서 탐체를 잡아 좀 탐체 넣나 당고 들고 좀 탐체를 잡아 용디 탐체를 돼 맞 대다고 그래 좀 가리리 동이가 저 차왔다니 그냥 박사를 개받아지 다 잡아지 내가 포선도가 내가 탐체를 저한테 맞 좀 되죠 동이가 좀 진짜 내가 용진이 저들이 제가 미치는 걸로 랍걸린 조단만 힘발돼서 메이드나 심진게 안지인지 마음이 샘들이 그리 동당고 대봐 이제 왜 시기들이 메이네 샘미는 상지에 그 미바세 발때 다다 그러고 대봐고 늘 때다 치고로 꼭꼭꼭 니지 메바고 그래 로나만 힘발돼서 메이드는 샘미는 상지에서 메바탑 따뜻한 거요래 주봉 제제 동 거래 대라지랑 레일 제송 제제 진짜 한 또라만 뭐레 대도 로자지로 장매바레스 파티를 장매바레스 장미스람레스 서르들아 다 semt고라 또 드서 파토아티다 파체게 동대체 하고 저 너한테 사기가 탑만 하고 말 저다들 라고 재밌겠다 나와서 라고 세면서 나와서 다 되는데 세고 내려고 또 오더니 저대로 왜 대답에 그때로 다 대답지 파트바도가도 스치 장매바티 저들이랑 세면 되는 세고 다지다 다지로 지피게 매니 저런 뜻전에 잡지 쳐다 주고 자 대답을 민반제도 소스
And then next is the antidote to ignorance, which is to request to turn the wheel of Dharma. And so what is ignorance? It is being ignorant, being ignorant of the cause of what actually causes happiness and what causes suffering. And so being ignorant of the causes of happiness and suffering, although we want to be happy, we strive for happiness, we really create only suffering by doing that. So that is what samsaric sentient beings do. That's what we call ignorance. So ignorance in brief means that although we want to be happy, we really we strive after suffering. And as an antidote to that, we request to turn the wheel of Dharma. Because the meaning of Dharma is to transform, a transformation. We transform the mind. The first teaching of the Buddha was completely tame your own mind. what do we need to tame? We need to ultimately tame the dualistic grasping. On the relative level, first we need to tame self-grasping through the altruistic mind. And there are various methods to tame the mind, but basically there is the twofold truth, the relative and the ultimate. And on the relative level, we tame self-grasping through love and compassion, the altruistic mind. And on the ultimate level, we must tame the dualistic grasping of perception. And so in order to learn, to receive the methods to do so, we request the Buddha to turn the wheel of Dharma. So, for example, in this world, we think that this is the place where the Buddha Shakyamuni has appeared to teach the Dharma, and he's just here, he's only here in this world. So he's our Buddha here. But it's actually not as linear as that. Actually, it's almost like a reflection of him appears in thousands of different universes at the same time. It's like kind of holographic. So and there are, for example, when Indra requested to turn the wheel of Dharma of the Buddha, and then the Buddha turned the wheel of Dharma, then there are like thousands of these Indras appearing in thousands of different universes all at the same time. It is just like a facet of a crystal that like reflects in many different ways, but reflecting the same thing. This, for example, is said in a commentary on Gongji Baekju Gidapa. And so, for example, scientists show us that too, how there's a mirror-like reflection of one and the same thing that appears on many different mirrors, for example. So when you project outward, you see all these different images, but actually when you go back to the source, they are one and the same thing, just appearing all over the place. And the basis is one and the same, and the basis is wisdom. And then compassion arises from wisdom. So the Buddha appeared in this way and taught the Dharma in many world systems. So here it says, I rejoice in all the victorious ones of the 3 times and also the 10 directions. So this is here speaking about the endless qualities of all the Buddhas. And then it says, so the construction is a bit different in Tibetan, but basically it says, all sentient beings without exception rejoice in their virtue. So now coming to the qualities of those superior ones, so in brief, the quality is that they are free of all obscuration, they're free of all fault, and they possess all perfect qualities. So what is a fault that they're free of? Fault is even the most subtle thought or cause of suffering. It is the subtle thought that creates suffering, including all the imprints. So that's the fault that they are free of, and they possess perfect qualities. They possess perfect causes for happiness. So basically what we call a fault is something that causes suffering. What we call a good quality is something virtuous that causes happiness. So all those sentient, here bringing to mind all the virtue of all those sentient beings. So similarly, the fault of all sentient beings is that they grasp at a self for as long as their mind is not matured. Then ultimately when the mind matures, it matures into non-dual primordial awareness. And when the mind is in a matured state, ripened state, that is what we call a Buddha. So the way we ripen the mind is first through the relative truth. And so we need the relative truth, and therefore we must request the Buddha to turn the wheel of Dharma, but actually the Buddhas turn the wheel of Dharma all the time, continuously. And all that Dharma, all these Dharma teachings are methods to mature, to ripen our mind into Buddhahood. The Buddha taught 84,000 different teachings, and each of them can be divided into another 84,000. There's limitless teachings that were taught in thousands of different universes. So you have to broaden your mind, really think in this vast way, and think that it's not just here in this world, there is just limitless worlds. So when you expand outward, when you look outward, there's this billion-fold universe. And then when you kind of gather it back, then it all comes down to only the mind. So that is also what we call sending out, radiating out, and gathering back. So we radiate out, or we project out, and have some understanding of, at least a fractional understanding of the extent of the universe. But then what we don't usually understand is the gathering back part. So when we gathering back means to see the nature of your mind, to see that the mind is Buddha. In the 37 practices, it says, appearances are one's own mind. So we have not really recognized that our mind as it is actually in the Buddha. So when you realize the nature of the mind, that is the gathering back. When you gather back, you realize the nature of the mind. When you send out, you radiate out, then the mind becomes limitless. There are these limitless beings in the 6 realms of samsara, and there's just incalculable sentient beings. And then when you gather back all of that into its essence, it comes down to the mind. And now there is self-grasping in the mind, and self-grasping matures when you cultivate an altruistic mind, which is just like melting an ice block, so it melts to be one with the ocean water.
주시 만들어야 되다. 주기나 주니 이성. 대대야들이 답에 라치라 때문에 답이 주로 이제 매출을 고가 때문에 주기지다 와서. 대대 주시시라고 제가 거기 ten제 주시 바로 가듯이 대대 좀 밥하면서 뭐래 좀 하고. 주기나 답에 따와당. 주니나 답에 따와. 라르가 따와서 따섬르시 여바방송 주기 따와는 포가들이 주니를 따와들이 다 타블람레서 라르 때라는 거 가리 또는 라는 게 또로 가다라는 게 주니가 가리 따와가리 등을 로도 따고 그래서 얘네들이 다 땅디 이제 뒤서 거기 소를 출코는 남성 호주 또 붙여서 호주 로마가들이 개발해서 로마가들이 로서 시작부터 주어진 것은 정말이 혼란 비춰서 선고요래 옛날들이 다 미니스트들이 이제 말에 비해서는 주진을 따와는 호화래 강리 라린 소비면 토마 고선이 강리 출근 좀 위색장세 주진을 따와 주진의 코너발 탑바 파고 살죠 같아지 주니를 따와 로돈 따든지 로미 대장 로돈 따다 좀 해봐 로미 봐서 신기해서 따든 로요래지 따든 로아를 가세를 로아를 톡래지 따뜻 따와를 제바가들 따와 또도 맞아가 최선전 조금이 봐들은 난 갔다 또 나고 되면 거는 고대니가 들어올 주요나 주진을 따와 딴 조화를 저그래지 가래지 다시 시합 셈 대식 뭐 요거 또 제들이 시합단 이제의 시합 때에서 대차례 털섬 좋아해지 그때 대중화종 이성섬 유명 독성 공항에서 소화하는 이성섬인데 그 누가를 떠자 따뜻하고 그 기와지 삼바는 이제 동지라더니 대 저기 가면 차원 체를 이때들이 토리섬 내가 민가를 담이 용요리지 대래들이 기와 시총 기와 시체송아 이성섬을 장매가 되고 그러지 다시 담정 이가 나는 소리 대하고 오 톱과 저 당선 중에들 뭘 하자는 용용 봐. 진짜 당 잡을는 때 하고 그래. 다섯째 당대 때 하고는 때는 오다 추진을 따와 준이를 따와 라를 따와서 이 대래서 다 대했다 그랬더니 사직을까 통타발선 수마를 베르타테데 데이터 추시 받을 때라고 뒤 능력 다 가는 거 가려리 다음 소대 답을 뭐인도 접고 시작하면 이때라 다다 대마지가 요래 요나한테 있었다 저 폴로스 받을 때다를 폴로지 왔다 놓고 거라죠 당 폴로는 이래 이때라 사지 좀 뒤지가 까는 이들 따와 가거들 대도 다 주진 따와 주니 따와 대라고 다 하고 주진 참아대요 참아 주진은 무보다 지마 다진 이들이 주진 성로래 주진을 때는 일단 나면 하도 착하고 주니 따와대 동안에 인직감 맞는 차요래 이제 말을 봐서 주진 만통 주니 동시 주니가 따왔는 통성들이 심지만 통상제도 남시만통 예시통시 남시시반데 소소가 나발시반데 다드는 남시디 만통 다다도 남이 죽어 다도 죽어 이렇게 남시만통 예시통들 셈제데 다른 과도 죽어람지 고대요 마대발에 대하고인데 그 심지만 방송하고 심지 삼제 내가들이 좀 많다고 그도 저런까지 잡지들 거라고 하는 문의 사진 문의 심지만 동상들 죽기만 죽기통 남심만도 이시통서 이시통을 때 사지고만 나 통을 통다고 때만 통하고 취재를 때는 때 폴로시 받을 다 되어래 폴록도 다 타고 해야지 내가 좀 돼좀 소리지는 거 그냥 뭐야 막셔도 맞고 하자 되니 소수 콜로지데 뭐라고 콜로지데 남녀들 타리 얼마나 했지 다디데 맞잖아더니 부만한 거 보마지서 부만한 드라마를 타고 거라지 야차타고만 탈시 봤더니 센트들이 이리는 타고 그래서 니들이 저는 다 나가는 탈이 다기지서 매받는 때 타고 그래 대회는 때 하장들이 사줘서 다디데 인핑을 놓더니 타고 인핑을 놓더 하자냐 타고 지차차 주인마들이 주인마 같이잖아. 다지는 이모가 치라도 don네들이 이모가 치마시. 이 인피로지 차를 놓고 배나 대레들이 다 주인이 주시마데 대레지. 이 대레들이 주인이 다 와서 주인이 정도 저렇게 버치나. 그래서 다 주jo 그런다면은 이 사제 좀 되게 송들이 적진 감도 똥다 되더니 얘는 도저히 감시해 봐지 그 똥사 먹어. 주저 홀로 꼴다 꼴지 말아야 된다. 대답을 그래지.
So there are different ways of different views, different things, the way one can view existence. So, like broadly speaking, we say that there is a view of like phenomena, like the objects, kind of a materialistic view, and then there's the view of dharmata, which it means the view that views the nature of those phenomena. And so then we also speak about there is the view of the holy dharma, and there is the view of the worldly ways of the human beings in this world, for instance. And that would be the materialistic view that views phenomena. And one time I asked a question to Khenpo Sherab, and he said that about that, and in response he said that he heard through a teaching by Jim Mepam Rinpoche that there are three views, and there is the view that views objects, which is the material world, and then there is the view that views the essential nature of these phenomena of dharmata, and then there is the view that views one's own self, one's own awareness. So there's the view of self-awareness. So the first view that views outer phenomena, the material world, is the samsaric view. And the second view that views the nature of these phenomena is the view that leads to the state of liberation. And then ultimately, the ultimate view is to view your own awareness viewing itself. So that is more on an individual basis, someone who has realized the nature of their mind. Then also Jigten Sumgön had said that the 3 Dharma wheels taught by the Buddha were taught due to there being a difference in the retinue's realization. So because the retinue, the disciples, possessed different mental capacities, Buddha gave different teachings, 3 levels of teachings. So actually there are some teachings that the scholars always give on that more elaborately. Also, Miller Repa, he spoke about this view that views phenomena and the view that views the nature of phenomena. And also it is mentioned actually in essence in the 37 Bodhisattva practices. In the very beginning it starts with an homage to Chenrezig, where it says, "You have realized that phenomena neither come nor go." So Chenrezig and all the other noble superior beings, they have realized that phenomena neither come nor go. So they hold the view that views the true nature, the dharmata, the reality of those phenomena. And then the verse continues, even though they have seen that phenomena neither come nor go, they strive single-pointedly for the sake of sentient beings. Sentient beings have not realized that, and that is why sentient beings always go around. And where do they go around? In the 6 realms of samsara. What makes the difference between realizing there's no coming and no going and going around in circles is whether or not one has realized the nature of the mind or the view. And ultimately, the mind is empty like space. The Dharmakaya, within the Dharmakaya, there's no duality between samsara and nirvana, although they are limitless phenomena. They are pervaded by the space like Dharmakaya, and therefore phenomena neither come nor go. But those beings who haven't realized that view just the individual phenomena, and therefore they see the 6 realms of samsara. But because they possess Buddha nature, which is their inherent wisdom, through the power of their inherent Buddha nature, they all do possess some wisdom and compassion, at least to some extent. And that will always lead to birth in the 3 higher realms. And then again, the mind degenerates, and we develop the 3 poisons, the afflictive emotions. And so for the most part, beings wander in the 6 realms of samsara, in the lower realms mainly. So sometimes they develop slight moments of love, and due to this very subtle karma of love, they sometimes take birth in the higher realms, the 3 higher realms, but it's actually extremely rare. It is as rare as there are stars in a day sky. It's very rare. For the most part, beings continuously keep wandering in the 3 lower realms. That is why we always say it is so difficult to find a precious human body. And so we learn that by reflecting on its causes, on numbers and illustrations. That is how we learn how rare a precious human existence is. When we just look around in this world, we can understand that. Or when we think about how many other sentient beings there are, we can understand that. And so, anyways, these are those 3 views: the view that views the material phenomena, and then the view that views their true nature, and then the view that sees its own nature, so the self-knowing view. And this is all according to the Buddha's teachings. So the Dharma, the Buddha's teachings, that's really the essence of the Dharma. And so now we are in the human world, and actually the human world is said to be a Nirmanakaya Pure Land, even though we do have happiness and suffering here. So here we are requesting the Buddha in our human world to turn the wheel of Dharma. And this wheel, also this was the Dharma, and now the wheel means that something that's turning. So just like the 6 realms of samsara is actually like a turning wheel. Like continuously beings go around in circles over and over again, just like a wheel constantly turning. And so that is why also the Buddha turns this in unceasing wheel of Dharma. So the Buddha taught that in essence, the view of what is the view of the outer world in a material sense and what is the view of their nature and the self-knowing view. So whichever view you hold, you can just know for yourself. But so someone who holds the materialistic view of that views all outer phenomena will be someone who believes in the true existence of appearances, who grasps at the true existence of appearances and their concepts and the existence of self and others as separate. And so for as long as we hold this ordinary view, it is extremely difficult to ever become liberated, as long as this view is in place. There are not many people who hold the ultimate view, which is the view that sees the true nature of phenomena. There are maybe as many as there are stars in a day sky. There's only very few. But Milarepa, for instance, had seen the view on the ultimate level of the view of Dharmata, and so he said that I do not see outer phenomena, I only see their true nature. So once you realize that, the true nature of phenomena, then next you realize, as Milarepa said, I do not see consciousness, I only see primordial wisdom. Because when you see things as they really are, then you do no longer see as self. So there can't be self-grasping. That's the ordinary consciousness. It's the self-grasping consciousness. So when you see how things really are, you see that there is no self. The self, actually, the so-called self, is all Dharmakaya. The basis of mind is the space-like Dharmakaya. And there is nothing whatsoever in samsara and nirvana that goes beyond this expanse of the Dharmakaya, even though there are limitless sentient beings. But if you see that, then third, Milarepa said, I see no sentient beings, I only see Buddhas. Sentient beings are just like temporary ice blocks floating on the ocean water, but there are no real sentient beings. So this is the meaning of Dharma and wheel, so requesting to turn the wheel of Dharma, and this is how the wheel keeps turning in samsara. So as we said, sometimes due to a slight virtue we practice, we take birth in the 3 higher realms. And then again, because in the higher realms, for the most part, what we do is non-virtues, we again go down to the lower realms. So in this way, we are never liberated. We turn like the wheel of a car, like an engine, constantly turning. Or for example, like a fly that is stuck in a closed jar. Sometimes it flies up, sometimes in the lower parts, but it always flies around in circles in this way. So this is how we will never find liberation. So what is liberation? Liberation means to become liberated from dualistic grasping. First, we must liberate the self, the self-grasping, and then we liberate the dualistic perception of self and other. And we liberate dualistic grasping through bodhicitta, through the altruistic mind. We have an altruistic mind, but it is extremely weak. It is a very small spark of altruism. Especially now that we are in the degenerate age, the more the degenerate age progresses, the worse it gets in terms of our afflictions. The afflictions become increasingly coarse, the self-grasping becomes increasingly strong, and the attachment, the grasping to this concrete reality becomes increasingly strong, and the virtuous thoughts, an altruistic mind, becomes weaker and weaker, more and more subtle as the generation progresses. So in order to become liberated from this ordinary view of viewing the material phenomena, we we are introduced to the ultimate view of the nature of phenomena, and this is the purpose of the Buddha Dharma. And so the Buddha himself had said that it is for this sake that I have taught thousands and countless of sutras and Dharma teachings, have turned the wheel of Dharma limitlessly in thousands of different worlds. So it says, please ripen all sentient beings without exception. So there's limitless sentient beings in limitless different world systems. So the outer universe and the inner sentient beings are limitless. So how can they mature? How can they be ripened? And why is it that they are unripened? What is it that ripens them? So this is what we need to reflect on here. And so look at the universe and all sentient beings. There's no need to think about anything else. So the universe is endless. There are limitless beings in the universe. But for example, look at a tiny little insect, like a little animal, and look at your own body, a more coarse body, a larger body. Then if you look at the body, it's actually one and the same. The body is composed of the 5 elements, and the body is a microcosm, like an example of the outer universe. And the mind is an example, or like the microcosm of the mind of all sentient beings. The outer universe, comprised of the 5 elements, is consisting of compounded phenomena, and therefore impermanent by nature. Therefore, like a heap of dust. So we speak about those heaps, the aggregates. The Buddha taught on the 5 aggregates. We possess the 5 aggregates which need to ripen. So we think when we look at our body, there's this this solid thing, but it's not. It's just a heap of different aggregates, temporarily giving you the appearance of there being an I, a self. So, for example, the inner mind would be the aggregate of the consciousness. So the scholars and so on, they explain the 5 aggregates more elaborately. But so when you look at the outer world and your body, your inner body, they have the same nature, composed of the 5 elements and ultimately turning into dust. When you read the Heart Sutra, for example, just a single time, you can really see what is meant by that. How the outer universe is just a pile of dust, and how the inner body is actually an example of it, like a microcosm of it. It is a compounded phenomenon and impermanent, and only appears that way temporarily. So if you understand that, for example, this is what you learn in the Ngundro, the preliminary practices, then the mind relaxes somewhat, and you will not fiercely and solidly and cling to the true existence of appearances. And so then what about the inner mind, the maturing or the ripening of the inner mind? The inner mind ripens into the Buddha when it is completely matured. So on the outer level, we must understand, the inner mind must understand that the empty nature of the outer world. So no, we think that this universe that we perceive, that's the real universe. And for example, a dream universe, a dream world, is not real. But it's actually one and the same thing. The dream world, or your so-called real world, is all compounded phenomena that are impermanent by nature. So reflect on that each and every day, the dreams that you have and the world you perceive in a waking state. Is there really a difference or not? There really is no difference whatsoever. Later, when you have died, it will all become the same. The Milarepa actually said you must practice realizing that there is no difference between the waking state and the dream state. In the dream state, for instance, you're creating an entire world, and there is really no difference between that dream world and the world you perceive when you are awake. And for as long as you have not separated from this physical body, you will continue to perceive this world as real. You will hold it to be true. But it is just as real as your dream world. And later, after you have died, the body doesn't go, but the consciousness continues to go on. And that is really where a practice is really crucial. At that point, when the consciousness leaves through the central channel and leaves the body behind, it is essential to here recognize, know the nature of the mind. If one doesn't know the nature of the mind at this point, it will only get worse and worse. So how we mature is through recognizing that the entire outer universe composed of the 5 elements, is a divine boundless palace inhabited by the deities. All the deity or the sentient beings are deities. The elements are the 5 dakinis and so on. And then inside of our mind we have the 5 afflictive emotions, and when they mature into the 5 wisdoms, as is explained very clearly in the Samantabhadra prayer. It explains that very clearly. That's why I always tell you, read this Samantabhadra prayer. We should always read it, because it explains clearly how maturing occurs. So as we mentioned the other day, what is primordial wisdom, and what's the difference between that and consciousness? But in brief, when the dualistic consciousness ripens into primordial wisdom, and then naturally the universe and all sentient beings ripen or mature along with your own maturing. And that is liberation. So what we call liberation is liberation from suffering. And whether or not we suffer depends on whether or not we have matured the mind. So if you do not want to suffer, you have to ripen and mature the mind, make an effort in practice so as to mature the mind and realize the space-like nature of the mind. In the Samantabhadra prayer it is said, even if the 3 worlds were to be destroyed, there is no fear. There is no attachment to the 5 desirables of the senses. So this is when one realizes this, the ordinary mind transforms into the Buddha mind. Or it is like Milarepa had said, I do not see consciousness, I see primordial wisdom. That primordial wisdom is Buddha. So when you look at the mind, with knowing that, when you then look at your mind, you recognize Mahamudra, according to how it is described in the scriptures, the various teachings. And in there it is explained that the ultimate Buddhist view, the state of mind, the nature of the mind, dispels both extremist views of eternalism and nihilism, because the empty essence of the mind dispels the flaw of eternalism, and the natural clarity of the mind dispels the flaw of nihilism. So that's the special quality of the Buddhist view. Dispels all faults of both extremes. So if you really think about it, if you really reflect on that, you will be free of any doubt regarding that. Actually, we are just creating our own doubts about things. There's actually nothing to doubt in the way the Buddha described how we ripen our mind. It's just we are fabricating our own doubts. So again, what is to be liberated? Liberation means to become free from suffering. So if you understand this, then you understand also what is meant here with how the mind can mature. Please ripen all sentient beings.
rank ting이 rank 또 저는 영어 센터 사자 저번자도 최고 내력 문제에 저는 영어 센터 참 사자 주변한 일에 사와들은 또 많이 이래 돼 자치버리지 또 학교로스 변했잖아 다음날에 배다 이시 애들이 사자 주변에서 동쪽 발에 대다고 돌을 때들이 따따를 잡서 못 알고 숨잡혀 대라서 같은지 들이 라사 돌카다 라사씩 뒤따버티 소나 강만 원이 정도 책들이 따버려 잘 뭐냐도 도움이 돌리성도 대가를 시키는 이 조람 탐색관이 나삼 주미 시작 바라지 그래서 20주를 봐서 나서 20주를 나와서 20주를 때 나타나서 그래 20주를 가르니 되는 다 나와 라레지 타고 마레지 그때서 다 라니 소비만 도실 때는 저다 나와 탐지랑 그 셈셈이 돈을 주겠다 랑그 내력도 하고서는 그 혼대 니가 남서 하고 다 로제되면 가래 딱 그래야 되는 데리 도마 로제 혼대가 셈이도 야 로제 도마디 매만고도 셈과가 샤도 가봐 야를 로제기스 가봐 야야 요리스 로제기스 로그 내려고 하거든 로제기스 라고 가봐 로제 말에 대대로 하고는 진짜 로제 들이 로라만 반대도 소지 동다디 와 잠시라도 묘하게 야다야데 남도라고 쩍char로 딱 들리나도 되게 이 시가 와 들으시구나 뒤 냠냠들이 고바 냠냠들이 쫄람대 저되잖아 들이다리 따와대 요거 요래지 뒤돌아 제세베바 내용들이 제제 하고 성지 그래지 오카레시가 야고면서 로젝트 딱 가려면 고베 제다 다사와 제정 고고면서 적성지 대도들이 차야들 민이들 밀로를 받대다 레메르 민기요래 들때래지 들지들이 다 대추로만 미서 다 가만히 있어.
So, what is the ultimate, the actual ripening and maturing, and what is the kind of feeling of it? So, how can we recognize it? Yeah. So, the Drikung master Dhamaraja had explained, when he explained the secret mantra teachings on the appearances, sounds, and awareness, the nature of appearances, sounds, and awareness. So he said that when you realize that all that appears and exists is the divine form of the deity, then you have perfected the generation stage of the secret mantra. And you recognize all as the deity when you recognize, as it is said in the Dzogchen teachings, the original purity of all. Or in Mahamudra it is called the fundamental purity of the ground. And so this is the experience of feeling that arises. It is an experience of the original purity of all. And also, Minling Dechen, when he passed away on his throne, he passed away on his throne, and the last words he said was that all ripens and all dissolves finally into the vast expanse of the Dharmakaya, and then he passed away. So when all ripens into the Dharmakaya, this is also actually explained in the very beginning of the Serkhangma prayer that we mentioned some time ago, where in the beginning we pay homage, we prostrate to the king of views, one's own awareness. And so now sentient beings are wandering endlessly in samsara, grasping at the true existence of appearances. And once they realize the view which is once they see their true nature, they see that all of that does not actually exist inherently. They begin to see all of that as illusions. So therefore, it is also said in the prayer that like beings, samsara and samsaric beings are seen as illusory by nature, see them as illusory by nature. And in Mahamudra teaching given by Saraham, he said that look at your own awareness. Look at your mind should look at itself. And by looking at your true nature, when you see your true nature, the true attainment will be, like true realization will be attained. And he said also that state of this undistracted state that views its own true nature is the state of Mahamudra. And once you see your own true nature, everything appears as Mahamudra. Everything becomes Mahamudra. Everything becomes vast. So the mind, the experience of this mind is extremely clear and empty and vast like space. And there is an awareness knowing, this vast expanse. There's awareness of the vast expanse. So that is what Milarepa referred to as I see primordial wisdom. And primordial wisdom and Mahamudra are one and the same thing. And this view is what dispels all mistaken views. For example, we speak about more than 230 mistaken views and so on. They are all dispelled just through the natural state of the mind, which we call the view. Also in a previous verse we have said, it made all dissolve, settle in the natural state. So that's related to this, the natural state of appearances, sounds, and awareness. Those three we also call them the three vajras. Also in the Heart Sutra, for example, it speaks about the perfection of wisdom. It says that it is the perfection of wisdom is inexpressible in being beyond words and beyond thoughts. And it also says there that it is the sphere of experience of self-knowing primordial awareness. So self-knowing primordial awareness experiences the true nature of appearances, sound, and mind, or awareness, the three vajras. So that means the experience of primordial awareness is that all appearances are the deity and all the sounds are the mantra. In the 37 Bodhisattva practices, it says, appearances are one's own mind. From the beginning, mind's nature is free from the extremes of elaboration. So once you know that your true nature, you will instantly know the nature of all samsara and nirvana, and you achieve a state of one taste. What does this actually mean, to ripen or mature into this state of one taste? So it is that when you realize one taste, then diversity appears as one taste. So although samsara and nirvana are vast, it all arises from this one mind. And then one taste appears as diversity. And then a great multitude of divine forms arise from the mind. For example, it is just like having 100 phones that are all powered by the same electricity. So once you understand the nature of electricity, you know it's all the same. My phone is powered by the same electricity than anyone else's phone. So this is what is meant here with ripening sentient beings or liberating them. And so first you understand that, and if simply an understanding arises in your mind, then you build from that by experiencing this understanding over and over again. So that is when a very strong, a coarse thought arises in the mind, then that thought becomes completely overpowered, destroyed by primordial awareness. So primordial awareness destroys the thought. So this is what we call practice has to be imbued with experience, meaning that practice has to be brought into your day-to-day activities in whatever you do continuously. And so if you eventually are able to stay single-pointedly continuously, you achieve the stage of single-pointedness. And then when that does not require much difficulty anymore to stay in that state, then that is called the state that is free from elaboration. And then once you reach the stage of one taste, then there is no more effort whatsoever. You just naturally stay within that state. And then once you reach the stage of non-meditation, then there's nothing else to be done. Everything is completed, accomplished. So anyways, this is how you ripen, and ripening happens gradually. So Dhamma friends, now please take a break for 20 minutes. All friends, please rest for 20 minutes.
I will saka teje of a